city. And just as a bit of background, you may remember that I was the planner on the Bell Rippey project, which was a 100-unit multifamily apartment um, development that we heard over the summer. And during the consideration of that project, City Council directed staff that they would like to have the Blake Gate near Walmart and the project area open by the end of the year. Well, staff took a step back and we kind of said, not so fast. We think that action would have some impacts on the neighborhood that we would first like to study and be ready for. And that's what tonight's meeting is about. Staff has been working very diligently on some options to share with you and to gain feedback on. First, I'd like to just introduce some of the staff folks that are here on the call tonight. We have Jen Uten, our Assistant City Manager. We have Terry Parch, our City Engineer. Matt Langhorst, our Public Works Director. Gretchen Rice-Hill, Assistant Director of Economic and Community Development. And last but not least, we have Jessica Bowser, who is our Assistant City Engineer, who's been spending a lot of time coming up with some options to help with improvements in the neighborhood to both accommodate the forthcoming apartment development, as well as just an expected increase in traffic in the neighborhood if we were to open Blake Gate. So I will turn it over to Jessica.
All right. So here's just a quick agenda. We're going to go through, we already did our introductions. We'll go through what's budgeted for 2021, potential phasing of this project, and then the types of options we have for traffic calming, and then look at some of the alternates that I've put together. And these are just really rough sketches that we can present to a design engineer to move forward with and take it to a constructible plan. So as most of you know, in 2019, there was a street tax proposed that did fail. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of budget for capital projects on streets. So with COVID and the fire, we've had a lot of impacts to our current year's budget, as well as the next few years we're anticipating. So our current street tax is out of our sales. It's 0.5%. It equates to about $2.4 million a year. And with that $2.4 million, $700,000 just goes to maintenance of the streets, what we have existing, trying to keep them up as best we can. And then for street projects, we allocate $900,000 to $1 million, depending on how the tax did the prior year. And then the remainder goes to other operational costs, match grants, bond services, professional services, et cetera. So one thing that tax doesn't include is our salary and benefits for the employees on the streets department. There are 9 streets employees along with 4 SWAT members, but the SWAT team is paid out of a different fund. So the current street tax expires in 2026. After that, we don't have a fund to pay for improvements from. So this is going to be a challenge in the coming years, trying to determine where we're going to find funding for a lot of these projects for our failing roads. And just so you know, 73% of the sales tax does get paid by non-locals. And then in a typical year, we would see a 2.7% revenue increase from the sales tax. But along with that, we always get about a 5% or more construction cost increase. It just depends. We see that increase vary, and some years it's higher than others, and 5 is pretty much the minimum you can anticipate. And that 5% is about $3 million a year that this increases our costs. So 2020 has been a rough year for everyone. We've had impacts from the coronavirus. Our sales tax revenue is down about 10% for the year so far, and we're expected to be down 10% next year. This 10% reduction does still maintain our normal $2.4 million budget for streets. And we did see some impacts from the Grizzly Creek fire. We were picking things back up. We would have anticipated our August to be closer to average, only 2 to 3% down. But because of the fire, it was down 10%. So our project budget. We have kind of put together this 5% sketch plans together, and these are, we're going to kind of take some ideas from a little bit of everywhere and the feedback we get tonight and try to move forward on a design plan or an idea with a consultant. We do have budget in 2021 for design. We have $110,000 allocated, but this doesn't just include Blake Avenue's improvements. This includes potential design for some other streets like Blake 13th to Highland, a couple of our neighborhood streets that are over off of South Grand. And then we do have some construction budget. We have about $200,000 for 2021, and this would be anticipated just to be spent from 23rd to 26th Street on Blake Avenue. And with that necessary storm improvements that we have on 26, we have some storm sewer that kind of is intermittent. It's been destroyed over time. It's been removed at some point. And we want to restore that back to the condition it used to be in. And then the next phases would be in following years. We anticipate that the streets project budget to stay around $900 to $1 million a year without another tax measure being added. And this $900 to $1 million goes across the whole city. We have 43 miles of roadways, and this does expire in 2026. So the phasing that we're looking at would be, phase one would be improvements to Blake from 23rd to 26th. Then we would have improvements to Palmer Avenue, which are not as extensive. The roadway there is in decent shape in most locations. So it would be some striping, potentially some addition of asphalt, items like that. And then 26th Street, we do need some significant improvements there. It is not in great shape, as I'm sure most of the neighborhood is well aware. We need to replace some of the curb and gutter. It's a really steep road. So that one's going to be a little more involved. And then phase four would be 26th to 27th to finalize that connection between what we've done on to 26 to the new development that's coming in off of Palmer. And then the new developer is putting in improvements along Blake Avenue past 27th Street. So this is a little bit preemptive, but this is one of the really rough estimates that doesn't include a lot of items that we would normally need to consider. But for phase one, I'm getting about $266,000 for these improvements for probably one of the more minimal options. So keep that in mind when we look at these. So potential traffic calming options. We can do a lot of things with traffic calming. There's a lot of options to go forward with, and some are more effective than others. We have striping, colored pavement, chicanes, speed tables, medians, rumble strips, and roundabouts. So striping can be a lot of things. You can widen your striping, you can add parking in a bike lane, you can add colored striping, you can add sharrows. These have a lot of benefits, but they also have a lot of drawbacks. We tend to have to repaint about yearly. And in some cases, it needs to be painted about every 6 months. The plows do wear our striping pretty quickly. Colored pavement. Colored pavement does come with an additional cost, but it can be really effective. It's also a lot easier for us to maintain. We don't have to worry about having to restripe things. The color lasts a long time, and it is way visible. I think a lot of people take notice of colored pavement. Chicanes are basically like, they use them in a lot of speedways in racetracks, but it's a bump out in the road that kind of diverts your attention. So it kind of slows people down because they're trying to avoid an obstacle. You can do these with islands. This is more of an island in the median in the middle. You can do it with striping. Striping is a little less effective because people can just ignore it. Or if there's bad weather, it gets covered up, people don't see it. So but it can be really effective. Speed tables, we have a few of these around town. We have speed humps, we have speed bumps, we have speed tables. Generally, speed tables are mid-block. They facilitate a pedestrian crossing. They can be in color, concrete, they can be striped. It can be hard to manage our drainage around them. That drainage causes maintenance for our street staff, but they definitely slow people down. So medians, we have a lot of medians throughout town as well. Some are bigger than others. They can be landscaped. There's an item called a soft median, which is done with pavers or stamped concrete. You can do stamped concrete along with the median. They kind of give you that narrow road feeling, and you can combine them with elevated crosswalks, striping, a lot of other options. So rumble mumble strips, we do not have these around town. I think the biggest deterrent from rumble or mumble strips is that they cause noise, and there can be a lot of complaints from neighbors about the noise that they cause. The mumble strips are a new item that I was introduced to when I went to a local road safety planning conference. And I think they use them a lot more back east when there's a lot of snow, when you can't see the lane striping as well, you can at least feel it. And then mini roundabouts, they can be a lot of things. You can do them with striping, you can do a mountable roundabout, you can have beautiful little landscape areas. They're effective, they're just as effective as a normal size roundabout in most instances, but they can fit in a neighborhood street. So with these improvements to Blake Avenue, we can anticipate that there's going to be an initial increase in traffic once the gates are moved. That spike is likely going to happen. And if we've done our job correctly and we've put in traffic calming that's really effective, that ADT should decrease and stabilize over time. We would likely still see congestion during high congestion times on 82, but that happens anyway. The success that how we're gonna monitor the success of this traffic calming and this design is we're gonna have to take traffic counts, we're gonna have to evaluate the speeds of people driving down the road, and then documentation of our crashes on these roads, and then as well as going out and witnessing it in person. We really need to look at the quantitative data over qualitative. These numbers speak a lot louder than someone's perceived success or failure. I'm sure many of you remember when the roundabout at 27th Street was put in, a lot of people were upset about the effectiveness of it, but I've gotten a lot more compliments in recent months about how it's not backing up. People rarely have to stop going through there, that it's a lot faster than waiting at the light than complaints now that it's kind of settled in and people have gotten used to it. And this evaluation is going to take time. It's going to take 6 months to a year after we complete everything, just to see how it settles and how the neighborhood is reacting to it after they get used to these ideas. So, alternative number one is an advisory bike lane. We do not have any advisory bike lanes in town. This is an idea that again was presented in one of these local road safety planning conferences. They're recommended for neighborhood streets, residential streets, to give walking space to bikes or to people and space for bikes. So the guidance says that you want to do this on a low volume road. You want to have it at low speeds. It should be a 2-lane road. There's no center line striping. Roads with adequate sight distance, and then a place where there is not a connection between biking and walking facilities. And we want to avoid bus routes, truck routes, and then we want to put them on a road that's too narrow for normal facilities. So as you can see, Blake Avenue really fits the bill here. You know, it's a 15-mile-per-hour street. It's not striped. It has good sight distances. It's identified as a bike route in our long-range transportation plan, and it has a very narrow right-of-way. Along with that, currently, I did do counts during the week of the South Canyon fire, and the combined ADT between Blake and Palmer currently is less than 1,500. So what's an advisory bike lane? I've included this video and hopefully it plays for everyone and everyone can hear it. Is that playing? Can you hear that?
We can see it, Jessica. I can't hear it.
That's going to play very well.
Sure is easy getting around Minneapolis on two wheels. A big reason for that is these miles and miles of bike lanes. They give bicyclists their own part of the road, making it easier on them and on drivers too. Learning the rules is like, well, riding a bike. Just remember to check out the lines. A solid line means drivers cannot cross into the bike lane except to park or pull into a driveway. A dash line means cars may cross it for turning or to make way for an oncoming car. You'll see dash bike lanes at a lot of intersections around town. If you're behind the wheel, just look out for bikes before crossing the dash line to the bike lane and give bicyclists the right of way. Heading down a quieter street in town, you might stumble upon advisory bike lanes. They're on streets too narrow to handle driving lanes, parking, and ordinary bike lanes. So what makes them so different? Check out the lines. Advisory bike
lanes
have dash lines next to them.
All right, so this video is from the city of Ottawa, and I don't know if you guys could hear the previous one very well. In Minneapolis, they've installed these on a few residential streets, and basically the idea is that a car traveling down the road would drive down the center of the road. The 2 lanes on either side are for bicyclists and or pedestrians, and then when there is a vehicle that is approaching from the opposite direction, you yield and you get over into those bike lanes as long as there's not a pedestrian or a bicyclist, and then you wait for that person, you pass each other that way, and then you get back into the center lane. And I think this one's volume is a little bit louder and you should be able to hear it a little bit better.
Ottawa is about to be one of the closest cities in Canada with advisory cycling lanes. Popular in Europe and in the US, the system is great for adding cycling lanes to streets where they wouldn't otherwise fit, narrow roads with low volume traffic and low speed. Here's how they work. Traffic from both sides share one central lane. Cycling lanes are placed on each side of the road. When there are 2 drivers traveling in opposite directions, the vehicles move into the cycling lane to pass each other safely. What happens if there's a bike in the cycling lane? Whoever is in front has the right of way. Vehicles travel behind the bike, but can then move back into the center lane when it is safe to do so. It is a whole new way for drivers and cyclists to share the road. Find out more at ottawa.ca.
Oh. And then the great thing about these is that they aren't just for bicyclists. They can be used by pedestrians. So this is in New Hampshire, and this is more of a in-person view. So if you're the driver, this is how you would pass each other. And then as you can see, there's some cyclists coming up, and you stay in that middle lane, you avoid them. And then,
This shows the perspective of a person walking against traffic. Here are some bikes passing the pedestrian in the shared travel lane. Cars wait their turn to use the road. Now that the bikes have passed the pedestrian, the cars can pass. This time, the car has time to pass when reaching the pedestrian. Then the oncoming car waits for the bikes to pass the walker.
the great thing about these is that they do prioritize pedestrians and bikes. Everyone is an equal user. You all wait your turn. So Ottawa introduced advisory bike lanes back in 2016. They did it on a low volume street that was about less than 1,000 vehicles per day. And they had over 900 people participate in their planning study and look at this as an option. After these were installed, the engineer in Ottawa said that they had less than 10 people reach out afterwards. Most of it was positive feedback. The rest of it was to ask if it was a one-way. This is so successful. They're looking at implementing another advisory bike lane around town on a larger collector road that does have more traffic. Both of these facilities do have sidewalks, so it's not as comparable for us since we don't have sidewalks on Blake. But they do recommend this on a low volume, low speed street. You want to do it on a street that has cycling, and it's not as confusing as people think it will be. Justin said that it took them 3 days to issue their education materials to the neighbors, and most of the drivers had no issue. So it's if you sign it well, it's pretty self-explanatory. And then they did do a study asking the residents, if they felt safer on an advisory bike lane condition or with a share condition, and they always said advisory bike lanes. It gives that space to the pedestrian, to the cyclists, as a priority. So here's the cross section of what I put together for Blake Avenue's advisory bike lane. I've incorporated medians. I've incorporated some speed tables. This doesn't include sidewalk. We don't have the right of way to include sidewalk, but I think it's a good option. So hopefully most of you have taken a look at the link online and looked at these plans already, but we have 9-foot travel lanes at the intersections, and we split the traffic for the cars with a little median. We have a speed table. And then at the intersection at 24th, we have some medians and crosswalks. And another speed table. Intersections, there's some medians that go along. And then we'd make that connection into the developer over by the Walmart. So, and this has an attached sidewalk that we would be tying into here, and then it detaches as it heads towards Walmart. So I put together this sketch. This is kind of what it would look like. I have a median put in here that we're gonna have to talk to the church potentially about if this is how we move forward, to kind of separate the parking space from the traffic space. Currently, I think that intersection is challenging because there's no separation. It's a big sea of asphalt. And then here's Palmer. We have some speed tables. I kind of try to do some curves in the road, so it's not just a straightaway for people to speed up. And then another crossing that would tie into potential impacts or improvements on 26th Street that include sidewalk on both sides of the street, designated parking spaces, and narrowing of the driveways. So the evaluation of the advisory bike lanes, there's a lot of benefits. It prioritizes bicycles and pedestrians. It is a lower cost. It's made with mostly asphalt. It can fit in the existing right-of-way. It maintains our circulation through the city by allowing two-way traffic. It does hit that missing connection that we have between the ending of the bike lanes at 23rd and then the RAFTA facility. And then if for some reason this wasn't successful, it could be easily restriped. And it does have a low impact to the neighbors. The drawbacks are that it doesn't consider the drainage. It doesn't provide separate space for pedestrians. And I know a lot of pedestrians do feel safer on sidewalks. I didn't designate on-street parking, but I think it would fit in a lot of locations. And then we do need to include a lot of signage and education. So
Jessica, before you go on to the next section, there's a question. Would you explain the median and intersection at the church a bit better?
yeah, so let's go back. So when I looked at this, it, you know, as you can see in the aerial, there's this huge sea of pavement, and there's like a parallel space here for the church. And right now there's about 17 spaces that aren't well marked. They aren't well designated. But when I relayed them, I can get about 20. And then if we install this median, it does kind of give you that narrow feeling. And it could be just a mountable median, a sand concrete median, it could have landscaping, it could have a lot of things. But this does involve a discussion with the church and trying to get them on board with it.
Hey, Jessica, somebody also wanted to know what the current volume of cars are on Blake. I thought that was about 1,500 vehicles a day.
So it's 1,500 between Blake and Palmer. I think the peak on Blake, I don't have that open actually, was far less. I mean, that's the combined. I think when I added up the two numbers, it was about 1,000, and it was a little over 1,000. It was like 1,100. I want to say Blake was under 500 or 600, and then more traffic was actually on Palmer.
Okay, thank you.
And just as a point of note to folks in attendance tonight, there is a button at the bottom of your screen online that is a Q&A where you can ask questions. That's where those are coming from. And then Jessica also has an option for questions later, and you can raise your hand at that time via the participant panel, or if you're dialed in by pressing *9.
Jessica, one other question that's come up was about parking on Blake. You know, with the shared lane, would we have any room for parking, or would?
So I didn't specifically look at parking, but we certainly would have enough room. As you can see, there's parking on Blake on the south side here. It's technically not in the right of way. We could fit another spot here. I would imagine if we did do parking, it would be gravel, just because if we start paving more, it's going to have more impacts to the neighbors, and it's going to cause some issues with drainage through there, and we would have to address that as well.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. So alternative 1A is a similar configuration. I didn't specifically lay this out. We do need to maintain at least 20 foot for Blake Avenue to facilitate an emergency response. If for some reason we had to evacuate that neighborhood, Highway 82 was backed up, and we needed to get a fire truck behind Walmart to fight a fire, we need to be able to facilitate that. So the consideration for that is Blake would be one-way southbound from 23rd to 27th. In that condition, Palmer Avenue would have to be two-way or one-way in the opposing direction for safety. We can't do Blake to 27th Street because what happens is Palmer Avenue and 26th Street essentially become a cul-de-sac. Everyone is forced to 27th Street and Highway 82 if they get to that intersection. So if they're coming north or they're coming south, they would have to get on the highway. So if we did that, then CDOT would likely reevaluate the intersection, and we would be forced to do substantial improvements at Highway 82 that come with a significant price tag. potentially the acquisition of Carpet One, which is not a small number. I think I see some questions.
Hey, Jessica, I can run questions up to you here. We have a question about the vehicle count at Roaring Fork Marketplace and Lower Blake from 23rd to 7th. I'm trying to remember if we've gotten counts between 7th and 23rd recently. It seems like we had some at 14th, which is kind of splits the difference there.
Yeah, I haven't done counts at north of 23rd recently.
I can find that number. I'll look it up on our system. And I don't recall anything at Roaring Fork Marketplace.
Okay. And then 1,500 cars is not, I think the neighbors would say it's a lot. It's a neighborhood street. That's what would be, I think in our engineering standards, I think the next threshold is 5,000, Terry, is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I guess there is a question about Palmer Ave might not mind being a cul-de-sac. I understand that they wouldn't mind being a cul-de-sac. I think everybody wants a cul-de-sac. The issue with that is that, again, we would be forced to do improvements at State Highway 82 at 27th Street. All the traffic would be funneled to there, and we would essentially be having people go the wrong way down Blake, I think, to try to avoid that intersection. So benefits and drawbacks. The southbound movement, it lowers the volume, certainly. It discourages highway traffic from taking Blake Avenue. It is lower cost. It's similar to what our advisory bike lane facility would be. We could potentially facilitate a separate pedestrian facility, so sidewalk. And we could convert it to something else if it doesn't work. And again, it has low impacts to the neighbors. So the drawbacks is, again, drainage, bicycle traffic. This is a bicycle route, so we would have bicyclists going the wrong direction versus cars. And then we would have to put in a lot of signage and physical barriers. I know we have a lot of people that go the wrong way on Colorado and Cooper. Still to this day, I did it when I first moved here. It doesn't look like a one-way street. And it does reduce our city circulation. We don't have a lot of options north and southbound. We have Midland, we have Blake, we have Palmer, kind of. There's not a lot of options for neighborhoods to get around. And this would increase Palmer Avenue traffic during periods of congestion. We saw it with the counts I took during the South Canyon fire. There was a significant amount of traffic being pushed to Palmer. So the next option we looked at was a smaller two-way road with a raised path. The pathway would be shared by cyclists and pedestrians. It is a lower, it's about 3 inches, and it has a mountable curb, so a bike could choose to be in the driving lanes with a car, or could choose to be on the path, or go back and forth between the two if there was a car coming and they didn't want to be in their way. So again, this incorporates some speed tables, that similar median. I did put in a larger median here. And then another speed table with some sharrows. So it's pretty similar. And then a little exhibit that kind of shows what it would look like. And then Palmer, I would propose that we do the same facility on Palmer with that raised path. That, again, it gives pedestrians a place to be, and it's a physical separation. So another crosswalk. And then again, 26th Street, I kept the same configuration on 26th Street. We really do need curb and gutters on that street. And we do have a little bit wider right of way there to facilitate sidewalks. So Benefits are it separates pedestrians. It gives that vertical separation. Cyclists could choose to be in with cars. They could choose to be on the path. Again, it's lower cost. It fits in the right of way. And I would propose this with just mostly asphalt. It maintains two-way on all the streets, and then it facilitates that bike connection. The separation is mountable, so a car could drive up it if they chose to do that. We will have to look at the drainage. There's a potential that this would increase our pavement. So we may need to add curb and gutter and some drainage facilities. This is wider, so we probably wouldn't be able to maintain any on-street parking. And again, the congestion during peak hours. And it would be a little more difficult to convert to another condition if it wasn't successful. But it's certainly not impossible. We could mill and reconfigure it. It is just asphalt.
Hey, Jessica, I had a request from the audience to go a little bit slower with the diagrams. They just wanted a little bit more time to look at them. And then one question about what are the triangle things? I'm not sure which triangle things they were referring to. Maybe it's that.
It's just striping. It's just to tell cars that they need to get over.
Okay.
And then these are just, they're striping like what we have on Midland with those speed humps. To warn people that they're there.
Okay.
Again.
So I think you were going to go ahead and open it up to questions. Gretchen or Jen, do we want to go to live questions, or do we want to keep going with the typed questions?
I would say we probably can accommodate both. Let's take a look at the live questions. Jessica, if you could take a breath for yourself and take a look at those questions and maybe answer any that we have not thus far. And just as a reminder of folks, you do have that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen that you can click and include a question or ask for us, as well as you can raise your hand in the participant panel. And just again, as a reminder, if you are calling in, which I don't know that I see any, you can press *9 to raise your hand. So just any of those that we did not get thus far? Looks like you got down here. Let's dismiss that one.
Yes, bike traffic. So there was a question about bike traffic. It would be two-way. It is a 6-foot path with a 1/2-inch mountable curb on each side. So it's similar to what our sidewalks do. We have bikes on sidewalks throughout town. But again, it would also be facilitated in traffic lanes as well.
Carrie, were you able to find the traffic counts north of 23rd?
No, I'm sorry. I've been distracted. I'll keep.
Oh, that's okay. Here, how about I'll take over some of the questions
Yeah,
for you, so that you can look on that. Trish Kramer did mention that Palmer Avenue and the folks in that area may not mind being a cul-de-sac. That's certainly something we can discuss with you guys at one point. Mr. Frank Martin asks, is the bike traffic on a raised path two-way?
Yeah, so I think I just answered that it would be two-way, similar to what our sidewalks are. Bikes could choose to be in the roadway, more like a share condition, or they could choose to be on the path. They would be able to get on and off that pretty quickly if there was a pedestrian in the way or there was, opposing traffic.
This is a very good question. This is from Sumner. Can option 1 move to a two-way raised path effectively if option 1 was deemed not effective?
So it couldn't be two. So we could do this condition that I'm showing for alternative 2 potentially if option 1 didn't work, but we couldn't do 2 raised paths, a raised path on either side of the road, because the whole advisory bike lane success is that cars can drive into that lane when there's not a pedestrian or bicycle there.
Jessica, this question comes from Annie, and it is, so the one-way southbound on Blake between 23rd and 26th is or isn't still on the table?
So yeah, it's still an option. Again, it's going to be a similar configuration as the advisory bike lane condition, because we do need to maintain at least 20 foot of pavement out there in the event of an emergency. But I would say that I think that for a congestion standpoint, just for neighborhoods to get back and forth, because we do know people are going to go the wrong way, even if we designated a one-way street.
And
So I think
I
the preference is two-way.
And he was also asking why we're not acknowledging the significant increase in traffic with the Blake Gate open. I think that we are, and that is the main issue that we're trying to understand is that how can we accommodate that increase in traffic as well as other modes like bicycles and pedestrians that are not currently accommodated.
Yeah, and I did with this sketch, I did do minimal traffic calming here. It is a pretty short stretch of road, so we could potentially put in chicanes. We can put in, well, I have speed humps or speed bumps, speed tables. I do show a mini roundabout in both examples, but that could be changed to something else. I just kind of I think we wanted to get a feel for what the neighborhood's thinking before we started investing too much into a certain idea.
Why don't we go to Erin Lee? She had a question in the in the Q&A box here, but let's allow Erin to ask her question live.
Yeah.
Erin, you should be able to speak.
Hi, I was just wanting to inquire. I actually, in the Q and answer, I did put in actually just to understand the cul-de-sac on 26th and Palmer better, what exactly you meant by that. But also, one of the questions is I didn't ever see in any of this was, do you remember in the city council meeting when Charlie Wilman suggested that you one way south 26th to 27th Street, which would create parking still, but people would have to enter it from north to south. And it would also alleviate, I mean, so we would still have the traffic coming through the neighborhood to get to that, or even everybody from north driving south, you'd be able to get down to the Marketplace Shopping Center. But considering we don't have very much money for budget and all of this is going to cost so much to change all these streets, would it be better to just, even if we just temporarily one way from 26th to 27th until the city of Glenwood recovers from all the COVID and all the things that were that is just creating so much financial distress on us? I just wondered what happened to that option or that even conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so if we one-way Blake south to 27th here, all traffic has to go south, no matter what. You can't go the other way. You would have to go to 26th and come back up Palmer if you're trying to head north, or go to 27th Street to head north, or 29th, I guess, which would be out of direction. You could, that's not a real street. You could dive down at 24th. So this road is all southbound. So anyone who gets to Blake Avenue that's headed south and or north has to get onto Highway 82 at that point. They can't go anywhere. I mean, I guess they could continue south to the Marketplace if they wanted to. But generally, you know, people who are trying to head north would have to go south and then back up. And then Palmer Avenue to 26th Street, you know, you could make the movements in both directions. But what would happen is you get to 26th Street, you decide you don't want to go south, you want to go north. So you'd loop back around and go back up Palmer and around, or try to fight the traffic at 27th Street.
Jessica Sumner asked, if Blake was one-way south to 24th to 26th and Palmer two-way, wouldn't southbound traffic have an 82 outlet at Blake McDonald's and alleviate some of the 27th Street pressure?
Yeah, I mean, certainly they could go down to 29th Street, but I'm not sure how much of this traffic is headed back north. So if they're wanting to go north, they would get on at 27th Street. We'd have to do another analysis, and CDOT would likely warrant some improvements there.
I think Diane helped us answer one of the questions. She stated that Matt Langhorst quoted 5,000 cars per day on Blake north from 23rd. Don't know if that's what you also found, Terry. I'm not sure there.
You know, I found I didn't find anything on Blake at 23rd. I did find Blake at 14th. And in 2015, it was 1,492 vehicles a day. So I'm pretty close to the numbers that I think Jessica had earlier. And it's definitely grown a little bit, but probably not a huge amount.
What other questions do folks have? Or is there anyone else that would like to raise their hand to speak to ask a question? Please do. So if you'd like.
So Terry flagged a question that was asking what the bike traffic on Blake was now. We don't have counts for that, I don't think. I doubt most cyclists do take Blake. It does have a lot of damage to the roadway. I actually was out there taking some photos and did see a cyclist hit some gravel and wipe out a bit. It was pretty scary to watch, but I think that if we were to improve this roadway, we certainly would get a lot more cycling traffic and pedestrian traffic through it.
Jessica, you have a request to put the diagrams back up, and I'm not sure which diagram, the advisory bike lane, I think.
So hopefully that works.
Jessica, I actually think that the question, yeah, was the diagrams, and I'm not certain which one. And then we do have 5 questions, so.
Annie, I'm gonna try to, you should be unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Sure can, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Annie and I'm an owner on Easy Street. And where Easy Street meets Blake is one of the very narrowest portions of Blake. So I'm wondering if it's hard to tell from the diagrams. I'm wondering if the improvements are planned to take advantage of that full right of way, which would mean Easy Street would have to move their mailboxes and that folks on the other side would be losing some of their yards. I guess I'm confused about that and would appreciate an answer.
Yeah, so I tried to keep most of the roadway within what was existing. So there's a little bit of encroachment here, and I'm not sure, it doesn't look like the mailboxes are showing up on here. But right here is the existing curb line. And here, and then the path would be in this location. I know you guys have some storm that go this way. So, and unfortunately, it would be great if our right of way was that wide throughout the whole corridor, but it just isn't.
Jessica Diane mentioned that from her front porch, what I've heard of as a windshield survey, that she's counted 400 cars per hour at peak hours, and thinks that the 1,500 per day sounds low. Don't know if you want to speak to that. Sumner also commented that he ride bikes a lot headed south, and Blake being his preferred route, regardless of road condition. He said cars are rare and very slow. Route is direct.
Yeah. And Diane, I guess we can recount in front of your house, and we can put a counter out there for a few days and get an accurate number. And those, those counts that we last did were in 2015, so 5 years ago, and we can definitely double check it.
Yeah, I mean, 400 cars a day is almost 7 cars a minute. And I feel like that's driving pretty fast. But I guess I could do the math and figure it out.
I think she was saying 400 cars an hour.
Right. So if you divide that by 60 minutes, that's 7 cars a minute, a little over 6.5 cars a minute.
Yeah, that would be quite a bit.
So,
but we can definitely put the counters back out there and take a look. And that's not a hard thing to do.
Yeah, there certainly could be.
Looks like we've answered everything that's in the Q&A. Looks like Trish, I'm gonna allow you to speak. Go ahead, Trish.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. It's just, the COVID is in the way, because if we were physically together, we could ask so many more effective questions. I hope you guys understand how difficult it is for our untrained eyes to sort of understand what we're seeing and hearing. And I know you want to get feedback from us, but I know I'm someone who's I've dealt with this sort of thing before, and I'm still kind of feeling overwhelmed. It's like you're asking for questions and feedback, and so just so you know, this is a lot for us to digest and be able to ask effective questions. That being said, there is, in the evenings on 26th Street, there is a lot of on-street parking on the north side of the street, except where there's driveways, as well as on the south side of the street, on the uphill east end. And I don't know if you've counted the vehicles, but there's a lot of them. More than what appears to be the parking slots that are accommodated on the design. What's wonderful about the design is the narrowness, I think, will help slow down those boys from Rifle that want to scream up and around the corner. And that'll slow them down, because it sort of feels a little bit like a chicane, the way it's a little curvy, whoopsie doodle. But I'm just wondering, I'm surprised I'm not hearing from Oakhurst people, because they need those spots to park at in the evening. What do you have any idea? Have you counted cars, and are you accommodating what you're counting, or it seems like there's a lot gone?
Yeah, this driveway is pretty wide. There's multiple driveways through here. So there's a lot of parking, and I think there's a lot of illegal parking that goes on. There's a lot of cars on the north side that do park closer to the intersection, which is a safety issue. It loses sight distance, and they kind of park crooked, and it is a really steep road. I think it's really easy for people to blow down it pretty quick. And the idea at the intersection, regardless of what option is chosen, I think we need to align this intersection better, so that, I think it's shown better in the Blake here, so that it's perpendicular with the traffic flowing north and south. And so this does give a chicane feel to it, and with a mini roundabout, or even just the medians and some raised crosswalks, I think that would help with the speeding down there. Now, in the wintertime, it will be a challenge. I know there's a stop sign on Blake here currently. So depending on snow and ice, it could be difficult, but I think it's difficult currently just because of the condition of the road.
Just to follow up a little bit, Trish, we are going to send out a survey with some questions about everything that you've seen tonight, and I do know that a lot of this is probably tough to understand in quick slides, but I know that Jessica and Terry are also happy to follow up and with explanations if need be. So feel free to reach out to them. I'm going to go back to Annie and then to Dave next.
Wow, what you're saying is we can talk about.
Can you hear me?
I sure can. Go ahead, Annie.
Okay. I guess a couple of things. I'm just wondering, will we have a chance to submit written comment ahead of that next meeting, November? And when again is that meeting? If you could answer that, and then I have one other comment also.
I think the meeting's next Tuesday, right, Trent?
Is that correct?
The Transportation Commission meeting is next Tuesday.
Yeah. Annie, do you mean the next meeting with City Council discuss this? But to answer your question, though, yes, you are going to have an opportunity to comment. We are going to compile those comments, share them with the Transportation Committee, then try to come up with at least maybe a recommendation from that group and share this with City Council before making a decision on moving forward.
Okay.
What was your next comment?
My other question was about the intersection of 27th and Highway 82. That, to me, the writing is on the wall that is going to be a more and more heavily used intersection no matter what. And I'm a little surprised that the RAFTA people don't squawk a little bit more about how awkward it is for their buses to get in and out of there. So I guess my thought is save the money on all these improvements to Blake, make it a one-way southbound between 24th and 26th, and put that money toward the inevitable improvements needed at that 27th and Highway 82 intersection. And maybe
I'll let
yeah.
Terry answer the RAFTA question, but again, we still have a minimal amount of payment we need to put in there. So the increase from a one-way to a two-way is, in the grand scheme of things, not as relative as the acquisition of Carpet One, which would be in the millions.
Jessica,
go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just going to say one more thing about RAFTA. RAFTA is concerned about the BRT access onto 27th. It is constrained today just because, of the driveway location that the buses have to use to access the turn lane there. And so having additional traffic on it and channelizing, more traffic from, one-way configurations or whatever, I think will really degrade the service of 27th Street over time. And, I think from a city standpoint and from a RAFTA standpoint, nobody really wants to try and take another business, Carpet One. But I do know that RAFTA is evaluating, improvements, parking improvements at the 27th Street station, as well as, other places potentially in the area. I think they currently lease, part of the Walmart parking lot. And with, the Blake Gate being open, I think there'll be some easier access between the two facilities. So I think, they are anticipating improvements that'll hopefully draw some of the cars out of this neighborhood and keep them from impacting your neighborhood. And hopefully they get them into, good parking spaces, either at the facility or at the Walmart facility.
And Terry, this is Deborah. I just wanted to address the question about if people would be able to come to City Council. Of course, we haven't picked a date yet, but we will make sure everyone knows when that meeting is going to happen with City Council.
And also I would add, in terms of public meetings, this is next going to the Transportation Commission. The Transportation Commission will meet next Tuesday morning, and this is one of the things that we're going to try and look at and try and make a recommendation to the City Council. So there'll be a lot more discussion there, and it is a public meeting. Everybody that's on this meeting is welcome to join us and be a part of that conversation as well. So the public invitation to that meeting is up on the city website.
Back to the Q&A. Frank Martin asked, did you discuss a one-way option between 26th and 27th Street only? I think we did address that previously at Jessica and why we don't prefer that option, but I don't know if you want to add some more there.
I think what Frank is asking is if we only had a one-way between 26th and 27th and kept Blake 26th and Palmer two-way. We would have a similar issue with everyone getting pushed to 29th and 27th, but I think it could work. I don't know what Terry thinks about it. I do think that it's only a couple hundred feet and people are going to see it's two-way past that and they're going to decide to go the wrong direction.
One-ways are hard for us to enforce, and we saw that when we made a small change for the parking garage on Cooper, that once residents get used to traveling in a certain direction, it's really hard to change a pattern that they've had over years.
Annie, I'll come back to you. Oh, you just lowered your hand. Re-raise your hand, Annie, if you still want to talk. I'll come back to you after I get some of these questions. Sumner asked Jessica, how can the advisory bike lane option maintain ped and bike safety in winter and snow conditions?
So the great thing about the advisory bike lane is it's easily plowable. Our plows can plow everything at once. It's a flat piece of asphalt. So that would help. And I do think there are less bicyclists and pedestrians out walking around when there's a pretty big storm. It takes a couple days for it to get cleaned up for them to feel comfortable again. But there's other things we can do. We can do colored asphalt for the bike lanes. We could put in some candlesticks. We could add those chicanes. We could add a small soft median that's more of a detectable median so that when people leave the lane, they feel that detectable warning.
What about Palmer Avenue? Have we considered an advisory bike lane alternative for that road?
Yeah, so I did put together one similar, and these are available on the website as well. And again, it takes this intersection and dives it in with some medians, a speed table or a speed hump, as well as the shared bike lanes. Palmer will be a little bit more challenging just because there is a lot of asphalt out there already. So I think on Palmer, this could be done with some striping and some minimal improvements to the roadway, but I do think we would have to stripe the edge of the roadway or potentially remove asphalt to really keep that narrow feeling for drivers and slowing them down.
Dick and Jan ask, have we considered a mini roundabout at the top of the 26th Street hill at Palmer? They wonder if this would eliminate the blind summit at that intersection.
No, I did not. I think the roundabouts are a little bit hard because you kind of want a flatter intersection to install them in so that people can see, and you can't really see around the corner at Palmer. But that being said, it really is a continuation of Palmer at 26. So we could put in a median and potentially not make this more of an intersection. I know that this is going to be a trail in the future. But maybe do a radius here and improve it in that manner.
Okay. Let's see if back to you, Annie. Sorry to cut you off earlier if I did.
That's
Should be
okay.
able to talk.
Yeah, I just want to say again that when my daughter was in kindergarten and first grade, and we lived on Easy Street, and we had to walk down to the school bus stop at 23rd in front of the apartments there near Alpine Bank. And I was actually extremely grateful for the condition of Blake. Potholes and ruts and mud, all of the mess that it was, because it slowed people down, since we did have to walk on the road because it is so narrow. I think that's clear to everybody now. But I guess I want to say that I understand that there are a lot of considerations here and that it's very complicated. But ultimately, to me, as an Easy Street owner, the fact of the matter is that the Blake Gate is going to open. So traffic patterns will shift dramatically, in my opinion. There haven't been any counts yet based on the Blake Gate being open, but ultimately, I feel like we need to decide if we want Blake to remain a neighborhood street or become a Highway 82 bypass. And I realize that as a bypass, it's going to be those couple of hours at night or in the evening when the northbound traffic is boogered up for whatever reason and they look for alternatives. But yeah, yeah, that's what it seemed like to me is, do we want it to remain more of a neighborhood street, bicycle and pedestrian friendly, or do we want to acknowledge that it's going to become a Highway 82 bypass route?
I'll let Terry answer as well, but I do feel like our goal here in engineering is to keep this a neighborhood street. Like I said, I didn't incorporate a lot of traffic calming into the plan besides the medians and the mini roundabouts. But the biggest thing that's going to keep Highway 82 off of this roadway is making it not enjoyable for people trying to rush up or back home. If we make it slower to go down Blake and Palmer than it is down Highway 82, they're going to stay on Highway 82. If they have to keep making turns around chicanes, if they have to go around a mini roundabout, and it's a lot more inconvenient, especially with the jog at 23rd, people are gonna stay on Highway 82. Now, when there is times of high congestion, it's gonna happen, and I think the traffic counts prove that it happens either way.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think that we see a little bit of it today. Jessica did do enough of a count to see that there is a little bit of additional evening traffic up on Palmer, when we have congestion events. So I think that, she's correct. I mean, we really do want to try and keep these as neighborhood streets. I think, unfortunately, whenever we do have a really a backup, some sort of an issue on State Highway 82, almost every road that is north-south in the city has congestion on it. I drive Midland frequently, and I see a whole bunch of people trying to get around on Midland when those events happen, and I'm certain that it happens on Blake as well. So like Jessica said, the answer for our community really is to, instead of, I don't know, trying to create these one ways, in my opinion, is to try and just make it so that, when people get off the road, it's difficult for them, it's slow, and they have to be more cautious because there are people and obstacles. So that's our goal.
Aaron, I believe you're unmuted. Back to you. And Matt, I think I unmuted you in case you wanted to respond to any of the traffic count questions. I apologize if I was not allowing you to speak.
Hi. So I just wanted to say again, actually, that's what I was trying to say, Jessica, a little while ago, was exactly what Frank Martin said. And that's is what Charlie Willman had proposed also. It just sounds like to me, all of the things we keep talking about, I know you guys just said, if you one way 26 to 27, that going just one way going south, it wouldn't, and not, I mean, granted, you're gonna have to make improvements to Blake just strictly because it sounds like they need their water, sewer, things like that improved, but it would still be a two-way street. It would still be, Palmer would still be a two-way street. 26 would still be a two-way street. But 26 to 27 down there in front of Oakhurst would be one way southbound, is what Frank was saying and is what Charlie Willman was saying. And I know you guys just said, well, that would maybe be a possibility, but it's hard to get people to change. And it's like, well, yep, but if we put a median, something there that you'd have to drive around going south, or something that with a big sign that says, I mean, the whole city's going to change knowing that gate is open now. People are going to change their traffic patterns, but at least everybody coming from the north of the city that wants to go to the Roaring Fork Marketplace could go all the way down Blake or Palmer if that's what they choose to do to get to the Roaring Fork Marketplace. But to get back into town, yes, you'd have to go out, more than likely either in front of McDonald's or the other Walmart out, or 27th Street. And more than likely, if you go shopping at the marketplace, you're going to go out by Walmart or McDonald's to get back onto 82. But we wouldn't have to spend so much money striping Palmer and striping and raising and putting in bike lanes and changing everything on Blake to try to minimize the traffic, because the traffic that's going northbound in the evening hours, because they wouldn't be able to turn onto 27th and affect RAFTA and get up and go and try to jet over to Palmer and Blake. It sounds like to me what Jessica said, that Blake has less traffic going than Palmer did even. And we've been trying to tell you that it's because this street is so wide open. So that I just wanted to reinforce it. Really, when we're trying to think about a financial piece of it, it seems like we wouldn't have to put so much money into the streets with striping and bike lanes and things like that if we just solved it so that people couldn't drive between 26th and 27th northbound. Thank you.
So I think Blake Avenue needs to be improved regardless of what condition we choose.
I agree.
It's in poor shape as it is. Matt could speak to it, but I'm pretty sure the utilities in Blake are from 23rd to 26 are okay. We don't need to replace those. So this truly is just a roadway project. And I do think if we were to run one way southbound between 26 and 27, from our discussions with CDOT, and Terry's spoken to them extensively when the RAFTA station went in and when this development went in, that an improvement at that intersection is going to be warranted, and it's certainly far more expensive than some asphalt and some striping.
I do think that from, even from a community standpoint, if we're sending all of Blake Avenue down to 27th Street, or we force them to go out of direction, and go back up 26th and around to Palmer and back to 23rd. I think that, even with the configuration we have today, I think that that once the new development opens up, we're going to see a lot more congestion on Blake. And if we then add, all of Blake between 23rd or 24th into that movement, I think that we'll see queuing on 27th that'll extend, into Blake Avenue, and that it will be really difficult, maybe impossible for a RAFTA to get buses out of that facility. So I think that, we're gonna, if we chose that option, we'd be committing ourselves to really gumming up the intersection of 27th and State Highway 82, making it difficult for you guys to get out of that neighborhood. And, I guess more people might move, once seeing that there's a big queue on 27th Street and you can't get out, maybe they would then try to go down to 29th and then go south from 29th. So maybe we would probably need to evaluate both of those intersections again, for potential improvements.
Yeah, and I think Aaron was talking about just a one-way between 26 and 27 still. The other, I guess, and I completely agree with the people need to change the topic, that people are going to have to get used to it. But I do think the crux of the issue on Blake and Palmer is the commuter traffic that are not local. And somebody who's from out of town, from Denver or whatever, dives off at 29th Street because Google Maps told them they could. And Google Maps doesn't listen to the city and let us update maps ever. So they're going to see that it's it's two-way still, and they're going to hit 27th Street and see a median and a queue on 27th Street to get back on the highway, and they're going to not want to go back, or they'll dive off at 27th Street and then have to go back to 29th. And I do think that traffic, because they're non-local, would be more prone to breaking the law, and it would be an enforcement issue. The locals, I think, would get it pretty quickly. I don't know what you think, Terry.
Yeah, I do think you're right. I guess I use my favorite project, the Grand Avenue Bridge, as an example. When we tried to cut people out through the Red Mountain neighborhood, we recognized that people were going to try and cut around the long lines of people queuing on Midland, and we put barricades up at the end of the road, and we warned them that those barricades were there, before they made any turns off Midland. They still drove to the very end of that road, and instead of trying to turn around and go back, they drove down the embankment into the church lot and then accessed Midland from the church lot. So people get very stubborn when they especially under stress conditions where the highway's backed up and they just can't get through. So I do think we'd probably be forced to do a lot more enforcement up there.
Well, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of the situations that the city's been put in the last 3 or 4 years, with the Lake Christine fire, with the South Canyon fire, with the Grizzly Creek fire, it's become more and more apparent that it's hard to get out of town. South Canyon fire caused a lot of issues with traffic in town. When the rockfall happened, it caused a lot of issues with traffic in town. And when people are frustrated, I do think they're more prone to go against the grain. But that isn't to say that it can't be done.
Yeah, no, it's possible.
Mr. Matt,
Mr. Trent,
please.
I heard my name. I think Diane Reynolds brought it up. We have a lot of traffic counts along Blake Avenue, and I think Terry just sorted through all of them, and some of them are inconsistent from year to year. Up by where Diane lives, those are pretty consistent. They seem to be at the 4,000 to 5,000 range, but that's more north on the other end. I think that due to some of the inconsistencies in the counts that we do have, that Jessica and Terry and I are probably going to have to go out and do some more thorough counts out there, maybe even hire somebody to start doing some more counts in those locations to really get some good numbers to work with. When it comes to utilities in Blake Avenue, yeah, we did actually do the water line a few years back from 23rd to 26th, probably 27th, trying to verify that. The only real utility work we'd have to do is maybe some slip lining of the sewer, which is non-intrusive. Maybe we would want to move some electrical out there that we have routed around that kind of feeds Easy Street and is a little odd situation. So pretty basic, pretty easy situation out there for us. It really comes down to the pavement. What pavement section do we want? How wide is it going to be? And those are all the discussions we're having right now. And what does that pavement look like? So utilities are kind of, other than the storm sewer that comes down to 26 that kind of starts and stops. The utilities are a fairly easy situation out there to get done.
I think Blake Avenue from 7th to 10th or 11th is a commercial commercial collector, isn't it? Which would be prone to higher volumes.
Yeah, definitely. It starts picking up around Sayre Park because you have the hospital built into there. You have the school, you have the church, you have the pediatrics. That area really starts picking up because of the commercial aspect of it all. And you can see that in the counts. I would like some more consistent counts, a little kind of say between 23rd and 20th. It'd be nice to get some more counters out there and do some more studies on that to see what the existing traffic loading is.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, it looks like we still have some folks that would like to speak, and I think we've heard from most of these folks, but we want to hear from you still. But if there are others in attendance that would have comments or questions that they would like to ask, I encourage you to do so. But Annie, let's go back to you.
Yeah, thanks. My thought is, why bother counting right now the traffic counts when the Blake gate is still closed? Because in my mind, living in that neighborhood, it's going to change dramatically when that gate opens. So, and I think it's not going to take the cheater type traffic very long to figure out that they can get on to Blake right there at McDonald's and stay on it all the way to 9th or 8th or wherever they decide they're going to get back on Highway 82. And in my mind, it's not the tourists that I'm worried about. It's more those, the rifle big boys with their big trucks, anxious to get home to their Bud Light. So yeah, I guess I'm just confused why the counts happen now instead of, or if the counts will take into consideration how much of a change it will be with the gate open.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I really appreciate that. We need a baseline. We need counts today, because once the gate is open, we want to see what that change is. We want to see what that changes initially. We want to see what that changes over time. To compare it, we needed something to compare to. And again, I think that our goal here, Terry and I, is to try to keep that volume similar, in a similar situation. Yes, again, the congestion times, we will get dive off traffic regardless, but we do want to keep it there. And by creating a narrow road, by making it uncomfortable for those big boy trucks, we're going to get a lot less of those down that road. An 8-foot lane is pretty narrow, and it's not pleasant when you're in an F-350 truck.
Annie, do you have another question for us?
Oh, are you still there?
Yep, we hear you.
I think I'm done with my questions for now. And thank you very much. I appreciate the answers, and I appreciate that city staff is doing careful consideration of all of this. So thank you.
Sorry, I think I may have, I was meaning to go to Aaron. Aaron, did you have anything else for us?
Oh, sorry. I guess I didn't realize I didn't know my hand was up.
Okay, that's fine. I'll lower it. Let's go to Diane. Diane, please.
Good evening. I'd like to thank all the participants for their comments. I think they're very intuitive. I think from my personal opinion, being on Lower Blake, our biggest fear is the connectivity to Highway 82 at the Roaring Fork Marketplace. We are all very aware that at backup hours, and we know the traffic's going to continue to increase, that motorists look for any other way out. I applaud the suggestion of the one-way between 23rd and 27th. Regardless of, all of the discussion we have heard about the need to have circulation for our community, I'd like to really see us focus on protectivity, which preserves the valley floor for the residents that live here. So I hope that that will be reconsidered and again, utilized to promote walkability and pedestrian and bike access instead of accommodating vehicles. The other thing I'd like everyone to make sure they know is that the registered vehicles in Garfield County shows for every 2 passenger vehicles registered, there is a truck registered, which means that Garfield County is already 30% noisier than any other county. So we are going to be accommodating out of every 3 vehicles, 1 truck. So just keep that in mind when you're making these plans, because in my experience, trucks really do not pay a lot of attention to speed limits and or narrowness of roads. And that's probably all I have to say tonight.
Thank you, Diane. Let's go to Trish one last time.
Okay. I appreciate when you guys try to assure us, because we're worried that your goal is to keep our neighborhoods and our neighborhood streets and not many bypasses. And so, it's clear you understand why we are all so worried. Number one. Number two, clearly, my sense is that you guys' focus is first and foremost on Blake Avenue and sort of secondarily on Palmer. And probably because Blake is so narrow and in such bad shape. Our concern on Palmer, of course, is because we're not narrow. We're a happy highway for those trucks. And I recollect, as I'm looking at these plans, I also get a sense from staff that you really, with what you presented with the budget, which frankly, most of us, when we looked at the plans, went, well, this is pointless. They can't afford to do any of this anyway. So why are we even talking about it? Just so you know, that's been our worry. And we knew budget constraints were sort of number one to begin with. And I think we're still wondering, if we put our support behind a plan, is it even really going to be able to happen or not? So that would be a question maybe you could address. But that being said, it seems like the staff, probably from a budget standpoint and maybe practicality, you're liking this advisory bike lane approach over your raised bike lane approach. And so I'd be interested in hearing if that's your inclination. It seems your preference and your focus of your presentation, and that would be the case for all the streets that you talked about. And I'm thinking that, so that would be a question. The other impression is that, in addition to whether it's an advisory bike lane or a raised bike lane, that you pretty much were talking about putting in the same additional minimal traffic calming measures like medians and a roundabout, and that it's additional cost to talk about chicanes or speed humps or bumps or dips or whatever. So if you could clarify that. And finally, I remember Matt mentioning that when he thought about Palmer and the difficulty of, I think, how it drains and a few other things, that 2 or 3 speed humps would be about all that would be necessary or practical or possible. And I do know that we residents agree with you guys that we just want people for it to be so slow and as much of a pain in the neck that they don't choose our streets. That you couldn't have said my heart better when you outlined that. Just how many, could Palmer take 4 speed bumps? May I have one right in front of my house? I've asked a lot of questions in there and that's why, gee, I wish we had more time before the transportation committee looks at this Monday morning. Because that doesn't give us much time to even call you guys with further questions. But anyway, I'll shut up now and let you take my mess of a bunch of questions from there. Thank you.
I'll try to tackle them all. So when I put these together, I was just trying to put a basic plan together. So the reason Blake is more of the focus is that whatever condition Blake winds up being has a direct impact to Palmer, and it does impact the design of Palmer. Now, if Palmer wants a raised path and Blake wants an advisory bike lane or vice versa, I don't think that that's out of the question. Like, you're a different neighborhood, you're a different street. I just showed them together in that condition because it was easiest to put it together that way. I did show minimal traffic calming on the plans, but again, that I don't know what the neighborhood would like to see as far as traffic calming. The speed humps, speed bumps, speed tables, whatever gets installed as far as that is, we do have to look at the drainage. There is an impact. It could divert water to neighbors pretty significantly. And depending on what selection Palmer is gone in, there are probably going to be other improvements. We're probably going to have to take out some asphalt to make it more effective. Matt can probably talk about the budget a little bit more, but I do think there was a condition that the council gave us that we have to improve. We have to improve this condition for the gate to open functionally. So hopefully, I think I caught everything. Oh, we need a bike lane. I don't prefer one over the other. I actually kind of like the raised path personally a little bit more because it does separate vertically. So, and we're talking about these traffic calming improvements don't have to, your orders of magnitude, you're talking about, a 1 or 2% increase to the project versus, the project budget. So it's not, depending on what's selected, it's not going, I don't think, to affect the budget that greatly that it would cause it not to happen.
I think Deborah wanted to comment on the budget. I can see her there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think we showed you the budget and our constraints just to, so you would understand that we are dealing with those constraints. I don't think it should necessarily end the discussion on improvements because we have managed to do things we couldn't afford to do before, right? And it will be a discussion we have with City Council. So I don't want to say we can do everything that everybody wants, but I don't want to stifle the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that it's a great point, Deborah. And what I was going to say is that, we've been given a directive to open the Blake Gate. What we want to do is to make any necessary improvements or to mitigate the expected increases in traffic. And we want to preserve your neighborhoods while doing that. But we have to start somewhere. We have to start with a plan, and we need to understand what your preferences are and what the costs of those are going to be so that we can relay that to City Council who writes the checks for us. And this meeting is very beneficial along that path and that direction. I will make one more comment that's in the Q&A, and that's from Sumner. He says that it seems that for the benefit of neighborhoods and livability and safety, we should channel as much traffic as possible to Highway 82 via 27th and 29th. Thanks for the options and the attempts to slow down in town, regardless of the options. Thanks. And I just want to remind everyone, you will be receiving a Q&A, or I'm sorry, a survey following this that we would very appreciate the feedback from you. I'm sure we'll also make that available on the same webpage where we had some of Jessica's designs placed. Again, that Transportation Commission meeting is coming up on Tuesday. As mentioned, we haven't decided when we'll take this back to City Council, but we will certainly try to compile all the comments as well as that recommendation from the Transportation Commission and bring that to them to try to help us make a final decision on this. Again, please respond with comments if you can, and we really appreciate all of your time. I think that your participation in the public comment piece of the Bell Rippey project really allowed for some great improvements in the final design of that, and that's our attempt here as well. But again, thank you for your time this evening, and we hope that we at least provide you with some better information and to make your neighborhood be able to accommodate this potential increase in traffic. Anything else from staff?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody's time, and please keep in mind, these are just sketches. These can change. This is just an idea. We can modify it with traffic calming. Please ask questions. I know I blew through these slides really fast. And part of that was because I knew there was going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of questions that everyone was going to have. And we really wanted to spend more time discussing with everybody and getting a better feel for everyone's concerns.
Jessica, I think we should upload this slideshow to the website too, so everybody can thumb back through it at their leisure. And then I did see that Steve Smith, who is on our Transportation Commission, as well as Lee Barger, are listening on to this discussion. And Steve has asked if we could forward any written responses to the survey to the Transportation Commission. They would like to see them by Monday so that they had a chance to look at them too. But we'll accept comments all the way up through the time that we go to council. But it is helpful for the Transportation Commission to hear this discussion and then have any written comments that you guys had to.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for your attendance, and certainly check the website and continue to follow this topic. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks.